All right. So, hey everyone. Today we are continuing on with part 3 of the Animate small projects project that we're doing. So this is just a number of smaller projects I'm doing for a client, and just doing some prep here to finish later on. So what we're going to be looking at are a couple of things in Animate. And these are going to be more interactive than the ones that we've seen in the past few weeks. So we're going to be looking at this first one, how to use a timer to create a countdown timer inside of Animate. We'll also look at, let's see here, the usage of sound from the library and linking sound into a soundboard. And then if we have time, there's a couple other ones too, but I might just do those offline because they're more. One of them is more heavily programmatic than what we have here, and that is the. We're going to be doing some stuff with data ingest and JSON data and things like that, which isn't that fun to watch on Behance, right? But we do have one that involves animated motion buttons. So we're going to have a look at this first one, and that's going to involve a timer, different timer events, and so forth. So here I've got a Animate document prepared, and these are all using ActionScript 3.0. So what I want to do is create some text here. So the text I create is just going to be text that's going to output the countdown to the viewer, right, the user of the application. So I'm going to use my text tool here. And actually, this is a new setup for me. I upgraded my system. So hopefully everything works okay. I had to kind of redo all of my OBS stuff. And I can see that there's a number of changes on Behance since I last streamed as well. So hopefully this all goes well. Let me know in the chat if there's anything amiss. But what I'm going to do is just drag out a big text box here, and I'm just going to put 60 inside. We're going to count down from 60 seconds to 0 and then stop. So I've got this object selected that I just created. We can see in the object properties that this is static text. We need this to be dynamic text in order to address it through code. So I'm going to switch that to dynamic text. I'm going to give it a name. Let's just call it countdown_txt. We'll copy that for later. So this instance name is going to allow us to address this particular dynamic text field through code inside of our app. So additionally, I want this countdown to be a lot bigger than it is. So let's bump that up a bit. And gosh, we could probably take it to like 130 or more. Let's say 200. Yeah, 200's cool. And I'm also going to want to change my paragraph settings to align that to the center. And the align panel we can use to align to stage and align that to the very center as well. And let's just shift that down a bit, kind of eyeball it to the center. And just do a command return to check it out. And yeah, that's pretty centered there. So that's what we're looking for. So anyway, let me know in the chat how you're doing today, what you're working on, things like that. Always interesting to chat with people instead of just talking to myself the whole time. And we'll change the text color as well. I want to make this kind of funky, so I have like a dark purple color, something like this. Yeah. And let's also change our font to something a bit more blocky, bold, distinct. Futura maybe? Nah, It's kind of hideous. Abolition. That's not too bad, actually. Let's see. Ethnocentric is always kind of neat. It's a strange font, but I don't know, that might work in this case. It's pretty unique. 200's too much. Let's go to 160. Yeah. All right. So now that we've got this text instance designed and filled out and everything, one thing I'm going to do as well is I'm going to hit this embed button here to embed my glyphs from this font. And really all I need to embed are the numerals, because we're just using, you know, a countdown here. So numerals is going to be the only thing I need to actually embed. Hit OK. And if we go up top here, we can see font 1. And we can see this is indeed ethnocentric. So if we choose that, then for sure it's going to render well on other people's machines too. This, of course, is completely different if you're using something like HTML5 Canvas. In that case, you would use a web font with, what am I saying here? You'd use a web font with dynamic text, right? But in an ActionScript document like this, you would have to embed the fonts, which is actually more robust. Hey, Hannah, how are you? Hannah, I believe, is going to be streaming later this evening. Is that right, Hannah? And you can click on her profile image to get to her Behance page. So she's also an Adobe Education streamer on Behance. And yeah, I haven't done this formally in a little bit. I kind of skipped last week. I had visitors in town, so picking it up again. Like I said, there's a couple of changes in Behance, which are kind of interesting. So hopefully things kind of go a little better. And this changes to my setup too. I upgraded. So we are looking pretty good here. All right. So really that's all we need in terms of the visuals here. We've got our text, and we can do a nice countdown timer. So I'm going to rename layer 1 to, I don't know, assets, visuals, whatever you might want to call it, and put in a layer called actions specifically for my code. And inside the actions layer, if I look in my frame properties here, I can pop open to my actions panel from here directly. There it is. And now I can actually just start writing my code. So one of the nice things about Animate, whether you're using JavaScript or ActionScript, is that it has a nice way of kind of auto-completing the code for you inside the code editor. One thing I'm going to do, since this is a fresh install of Animate, I'm going to change the preferences here. In my code editor, I want to make this a bit larger, so let's go to 14, and that's going to show up better, especially on a stream like this. So hopefully that's going to look okay. If it's not big enough, I can always make it larger. So let me know in the chat, and I can make adjustments as we go here. So the first thing we need is we need to create a variable that's going to start out at 60. So I'm going to create a new variable, use the var keyword here, and let's just call it CD seconds, so that's countdown seconds. And this is going to be a number. So in ActionScript, you always have to declare the type for any variables and constants and things like that. So we're declaring this as a number type. We're going to set it equal to 60. So this is going to be our starting point. We want to count down from 60 to 0 inside of this thing. So there we go. We've got that. Oh, and before we even do that, I need to clear out my actual timer on the stage, my display. So I can say countdown text dot text, or I thought it was text. It's been a while. It's been a real while since I've written ActionScript. So countdown text, and we're just going to make this just blank. So one way to test if this works, if I run this, if I do a test movie, it should, yeah. So there we go. You can see it's actually made that blank for us because I passed in an empty string. So that is exactly what we want. And actually, I can take this down to 100% too. We don't need that to be so darn large. There we go. All right, so we've cleared out our text on the stage, and we've got our CD seconds variable, our countdown seconds. So we also need to make a countdown timer. So I'm going to create a variable for that. So var CD timer. And of course, we have to type a timer as well. This is another type of variable. So I'm going to set that to a timer. You can see the autocomplete here. It's pulling this from the Flash utils package. And as soon as I hit enter, it actually imports that package for us for use. So there's certain, when you're working in ActionScript, there's certain classes that are just automatically available to you. Like number is one of those, right? So when I use number, I don't actually have to formally import it. However, a timer is a bit different. That's not included by default. So I have to actually import from the flash.utils.timer class. All right, so we're going to set this equal to a new timer instance. And you know, a lot of the language inside of Animate sort of meshes, right, between when you're doing stuff in animation and motion design and visuals, and when you're working with interactivity and code. So I'm creating a new instance of timer. It's just like when you're working in the library and you're pulling out instances onto the stage. It's the same sort of thing, really. So here we're going to set a new timer to fire off every 1,000 milliseconds. That's our delay. And then we need a repeat count here we can put in. So we want this to repeat the number of seconds that we have. So CD seconds. That's going to be 60. And that will establish our timer. So the next thing we need to do is set, let's see. We cleared out our timer, and we now need to set it to CD seconds, right? So let's go ahead and set countdown underscore txt.text. We'll set that equal to CD seconds. But CD seconds is a number, and we need to actually pass a string into this text field. So what we can do is use a little utility here, toString, and that's going to convert that to a string for us. So it'll convert the number 60 to a string of 60. So now if I go ahead and test movie again, there we go. It's placed that back programmatically. So I guess we don't really have to do this first part here, but you know, it's good to know what these things are doing, right? So the next thing we're going to do is start our timer. So I'm going to say CD timer dot, and you can see as I put the dot in there, we get a number of suggestions. So I'm going to say start. That is actually going to start the timer for us. But the timer isn't really going to do much of anything just yet, because what we need to do is add an event listener to our timer. And we could actually do that up here right after we create the timer. That's going to make a little more sense. So let's say cd timer dot add event listener. And what type of event are we going to have here, right? We've got all these different timer events. And this one right here is timer event.timer. So if I hit enter or return, two things happen. It puts in timer event.timer, and it also imports the timer event class for us. So that's pretty cool. And we have a listener, which is a function. So that listener, I'm going to call it run CD for run countdown. This is what's going to actually effectively process our countdown. And now we have to actually write that function. So I'm going to declare a new function here and call it run CD. And the run CD function itself is going to accept an event of type, since we're firing it off from a timer event, that's exactly what we want to pass in as the event that comes through there, right? And it's funny, I was just, we started classes for fall semester yesterday at the university. And, I held a couple classes. One was an in-person class. And one of the things that I talked about, that I mentioned, was that how burnt out I was of code when I made the transition from a software engineer to a faculty member at the university. And it's interesting that just right now, a day later, what am I doing? I'm writing code. I'm writing code on Behance, which is odd. I don't think this is something people do a lot on Behance, right? So here we're going to decrement CD seconds. Every 1,000 milliseconds, so every second, we're going to remove a second from that. That's going to affect our countdown, right? So the last thing we need to do is, of course, put that out to string again. So I'm going to just copy this and pop it in there. And that should really do it. So if I go ahead and hit test movie now, this should run. Look at that. Gosh, I have not lost my touch, right? I can still code with the best of them. Yeah, so what'll happen is this will go all the way down to 0. But then, because we don't have any logic in place to stop it at that point when it finishes, it'll probably start becoming negative numbers, which probably isn't something we really want. But let's see what happens here, right? It'll be interesting to watch as this countdown goes. So yeah, Hannah's the only person who's said anything so far. So please do comment in the chat. Let me know what's up, how you're doing, things you're involved in. Just say hi. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, 0, and oh, actually, it did stop at 0. It did not decrement past 0. So really, it's okay. And I suppose that would be because, now that I think about it, what did we pass in here? Right there, we passed in that we want this to execute 60 times. So it's done that, so it's stopped at that point. So we don't even have to stop it completely there. Now, one thing that I noticed is it isn't quite centered now that I switch the font. So let's kind of test it again. Maybe go up a little bit more. Yeah, so that's nicely centered there. And if this sort of like jumping as the characters change, if that bothers you, you could always go through and use a monospaced font, right? That's going to keep things even better and cleaner. So for instance, if instead of using font 1 here, which is ethnocentric, and I believe that's an Adobe font that you could grab from Adobe Fonts, if I went in here and chose something like typewriter, typewriter is a monospaced font. So it is going to actually retain that spacing between the characters as we go through and as everything counts down. So let's test it out with a monospaced font. So I'll probably keep it at that. The ethnocentric looks cooler, but it's not as nice and neat and functional as a true monospace font would be. But this is good. I'm going to keep it like that. Right on. And there we go. That's the task I needed to do for number 1 here, this first one. So that is done. So the second thing on my list, let's pop over to this fellow here. This is going to be a fun one. It's a sound effects board that we're going to build out. And we're going to draw sounds from our library here. So I've already placed some sounds in here. And these particular sounds are actually going to, they're actually from the assets panel. So if you go to the new assets panel inside of Animate, if you go into the default tab and look for sound clips, you can find sound effects, background scores, and so forth. And you can preview these here. So if you were looking for something specific, that's not a good one. You could preview those right here. So yeah, these are free to use, and I've brought some of those into my library. So the first thing we need to do for our effects board is we need to be able to get to these sounds through code, right? Because we're going to play them when somebody clicks a button or a movie clip symbol or something. So let's go ahead and provide a linkage ID to each one of these. It works very similar to the more common usage of giving things names in order to address them through code, which is through instance names. But if you don't have an instance on the stage, you can still address these items using a linkage ID. And that's exactly what this column in the library is for. So let's listen to this one here. All right, I'm just going to call this one Boom. That's going to be its linkage ID. Ooh. Wow. Let's call this one Tear. Smash. Drop. Bubbles. And Impact. Those all sound like good linkage IDs. Nice and short. Much shorter than the actual names of the files that are in the library. And you can see these are all little MP3 files here. All right, so the next thing we need to do, now that we have our linkage IDs set up, we need to go ahead and actually create some stuff on the stage here. And I'm going to use this as a guide. So what we need to do is create some little buttons. And I'm just going to create a little oval here. Color, let's go with, I don't know. Let's keep this kind of gray. Stroke. Even lighter gray. Nice thick stroke. Let's go with 10. We'll see how that looks, right? A little too much. So I want to make the buttons about that big, and this is going to be simple. Very simple buttons. Water. Yeah. So Hannah, you almost always join me on streams when I'm doing like weird stuff like this. When I'm doing stuff around some kind of interactive code type stuff, which is not something I do a whole lot. But you always seem to join at these times, which is interesting. Yeah, that looks better. You could play with these buttons as much as you want. I'm just going to select this and create a symbol out of the shape here. So I'm going to click my Convert to Symbol button, my quick action over here with the content already selected. Yes. So there we go. And again, I'm going to make this a actual button. And let's call this oval, no, circle button, I don't know. circle BTN. Put the registration point at the center, and there we go. Now we could go in here, of course, and enter into the button timeline and add additional states in here. So if I wanted my overstate, maybe the button lights up a little bit, right? So here's up, over, and then the down state. 1, 2, 1, 2. We'll make it so it kind of like presses in a little bit, right? And let's reverse that too, except I don't want it to be that white. Let's kind of turn it like that. So there's up, over, down. And we can actually test this right now too. If we go ahead and test movie, you can see there's the up state, we have our over state or our hover state, and then when I hit down, you can see it actually does press down a little bit, right? So pretty cool. We've got a little functional button there. And you know what? Maybe I'll actually just tweak that a little bit. Yeah, so now it's just pressing in just a little bit. It was a little too pronounced earlier. Oh, thanks, Hannah. Yeah, so everybody, you know, if you're not following Hannah, just click on her little image there in the chat, and you can subscribe to her streams and follow her work and all the rest. Yeah, so there are a number of us who are, you know, like Adobe education featured live streamers. Let me see if I can pull that up. Live stream. There it is. So there's an Adobe Spark page. You can get to all of our stuff. So here it is. Try to make it a little larger, and I'll paste this in the chat too. So yeah, it's got the basic schedule right here. So here I am. Tuesdays at 11. Here's Hannah. Tuesdays at 7:30, and these are Pacific times. And yeah, let me paste that in there for everybody. Let's see. Boop. There we go. So yeah, check out the schedule. All right, so I've got, I'm gonna go back to scene 1 here, and inside my library, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of hold down my Alt or Option key, just like in Illustrator, just like in Photoshop, just like in XD, and just pull out duplicate instances of all these. And in my line panel, I can make sure that these are spaced out nicely, vertically, which they should be, and align to stage. Oh, I don't want to do that. Align to each other. Yeah, they're good. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna name these now. So just like inside my library, I gave these guys linkage IDs, right? Inside of my properties panel in my object tab, I'm gonna give each of these a little instance name. And I'm just gonna name them pretty generically. So B1, B2, B3. It's gonna keep things nice and easy. And I don't have to think up different names for them all. So let's do B4 and B5. And finally, we've got B6 coming down there. There we go. So now each of these has an instance name to go along with it, which is great. So let's go ahead and name this assets, content, whatever you want for this layer. We're gonna have the buttons on there, and I'm gonna use text again. And this time I don't want to use dynamic text. I'm going to use static text. And gosh, let's choose just sans. And this is just going to be, whenever you see the underscore with the name of a typeface inside of Animate like this, that's going to be the default sans typeface on whatever system you have. When you see sans serif, it's going to use the default sans serif, and typewriter is going to be the default monospace font. You can see we've got all three of those right here. So I'm going to just use the sans serif font and not the serif or the typewriter for this. And it's a bit big because that's what we did in the last project. So let's go ahead and name these according to what we have in the library. So we got boom. Oops. Oh, I selected the bone tool somehow. Let's try that again. Boom. Great. And then we've got, well, how big should this be? That looks a little big. Let's take that down a bit. Cool. So yeah, I mean, you could put it new text objects here and there, or you can do the same sort of thing we did with the buttons, and that's just holding down Alt or Option and just creating new buttons here. And I have all of my snap options activated in Animate right now, so it should be snapping pretty well. You can see it does need a little bit of alignment care, so let's go ahead and align all these left edge, and we will also space them. Yeah, they're spaced perfect because of that snapping option. And if you're interested, snapping can always be accessed from the view menu, snapping. And I always say go to edit snapping because you can tick and untick each one of these, but it takes forever. If you open up your edit snapping dialog here, you can do whatever you want and just hit OK, and it'll take them. So pretty cool. All right, let's look at our library. We got boom tear, which is a scary one. Looks like that's right. I've got all these center aligned, so they're all going to need adjusting again, but that's okay. Smash. Oops. Drop. Bubbles. And impact. There we go. Oops. I want to capitalize that guy. And then we'll just use the selection tool to grab all those again. Use the alignment panel to align them all. And then just shift them over a bit with our arrow keys. Perfect. All right. So we've got the visuals for our sound effects board. I'm going to add in, once again, a new layer. Call it actions in order to write the code. And let's pop open our little guy here. So let's see. What we're going to do is say, let's start with B1. We're going to add an event listener. And that's going to be of type mouse event dot click. Yes? Maybe? Here, let's import mouse event, because then we'll get all the goodies with it. So we'll say import flash.events.mouse event. There we go. See that? And now we get our click event here. So add an event listener. It's going to listen for a click. And when it hears a click, we're going to call a function, right? So we'll say B1 clicked is going to be the function name. That's pretty simple. And then down below, we're going to say, we're going to have to create the function. So function B1 clicked is what we named it. It's going to receive an event just like the last project, and this is going to be a mouse event. Nice. No, not motion event. Mouse event. And it's going to return nothing, so void is its function type. And then inside of the function body, we need to say, I want to play this sound. So in order to do that, we need to set up something else up top here. We need to declare some variables based on those linkage IDs that we see over here. And this is, it sounds confusing, but this is like a really cool thing about Animate and about, you can do this with JavaScript too. You don't have to use ActionScript for this. You can definitely pull things from the library with their linkage IDs with JavaScript to create different instances as well. It's just that the requirements of this project have me doing it inside of ActionScript, so that's what I'm doing, right? So we're going to create a new variable, so var, and let's call this boom sound. Just going to give it a name. You can call it just about anything, and we're going to type it to our actual linkage ID. So the linkage ID is boom. We're going to set that equal to a new instance of boom. So a little weird, but pretty cool. And what we're going to do is say boom sound, because this is instantiated now, right? We can say inside of our click boom sound dot play, and oh, cool, Hannah, thanks for joining. Have a nice class, and maybe see you later during your stream this evening. All right. So what we're going to do, we only want it to play the once, so I'm going to set looping to 0. And the volume itself, I'm going to set to its max value. All right, so this may work. It may not work. Let's find out. Let's go ahead and hit test movie. Nice. Did it twice there. So that's pretty cool, right? And we can do the same thing with all these other bits and pieces too. So all we need to do is to kind of duplicate this process for each one of these, right? So let's just copy this and paste it in 5 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we got 6 of these, and instead of boom sound, this is going to be tear sound, tier, hello, tier, hello. Huh, that's weird. I can't type inside of here now. That's not cool. Oops. I did not mean to create a text object there. Oh, it's gone. All right, so let's see here. There we go. That was very odd. Never seen that happen before. All right, so this is going to be tear. Hello. Huh. Well, Animate, what are you doing, dude? Let's go ahead and close that out. Open it back up again. See what happens. We're almost done this project anyway, so not a huge deal if we have to stop it here. Let's see, I gotta find inside my Dropbox where I'm putting these guys. And this is 7.2 that I'm working on. Boom. Okay. Let's see if I can actually type now. Hopefully. No, it's not letting me. Huh, that's very weird. All right, well, but I can hit delete. So, yeah, let's recap. So what you would basically do, since it seems like I found some sort of bug in Animate. I know there was a release just a few days ago or last week or whatever. So, uh-oh. But anyway, we set a variable boom sound, and we type it to boom and set it to a new boom instance. And then on our B1, which is an instance name given to this guy right here, what we do is we say we want to add an event listener, and that event listener is going to be of type mouse event.click. When that happens, we say, I want to fire off a function called B1 clicked, which we define right here as a function, B1 clicked. The event comes across right here as an argument that we could use if we wanted to. We have no use for it right now though. And then we just say boom sound, which we defined up here. We say play, and we just want it to play once, so no looping whatsoever. And that's what we get. So we have a nice little sound effects board. And what we can do, actually maybe I don't know, should I just restart Animate? Let's quit Animate. Animate, what is going on with you, buddy? There we go. Open it back up again. Yeah, that's a new one for me. Oh, not 7.1. I wanted 7.2. Darn it. 7.2. There we go. So I'm going to give this one more shot, see if I can change these. Yeah, so I can type now. Oh, now I can't. All right. Obviously, there's some kind of bug inside of Animate, so I'm going to leave it at this, okay? But basically what you would do is you would just copy each one of these things. So you define the sound, you create the listener, you create the function that goes with the listener, and then what you're able to do is just program this whole board so you can go down, just boom, tear, smash. And the idea behind it is, you know, if you're doing some sort of a radio show or play or something like that, you'd be able to fire off all these little sound effects at will. But yeah, Animate's having a fit here, so I'm not gonna fight it. I'm gonna let the Animate team know that, hey, there's something up with the code editor right now that kind of throws a wrench into anything. So hey, anybody who's still here, thank you for watching. I do these generally every Tuesday at this time, so I'll see you all later. Thanks again.